Captain Alex Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Endeavour, watching the main screen with narrowed eyes. 6 alien ships had entered the solar system without warning. They were large, angular vessels covered in what looked like metallic scales, with glowing red energy signatures that the ship's computers couldn't identify. "How long until they reach Mars orbit?" he asked. Lieutenant Olivia Wright checked her console. 3 hours, sir. They're moving fast. Earth's Unified Defense Force had scrambled when the unknown fleet appeared past Neptune's orbit. The Endeavour, Earth's newest and most advanced ship, was sent to intercept. Their mission was simple but daunting: establish first contact and determine if these visitors were peaceful. "Any response to our hails?" Morrison asked. "Nothing yet, sir," said Communications Officer Joe Garcia. "I sent messages in all standard formats." Morrison ran a hand through his short brown hair. Humanity had encountered alien life before: microbes on Europa, simple plant-like organisms on distant exoplanets, but never an advanced civilization. Certainly never one with ships that could reach Earth. The bridge fell silent as everyone focused on their tasks. Morrison felt the weight of 7 billion lives resting on his decisions today. "Sir, we're getting something," Garcia said suddenly. "They're responding." The main screen flickered, and they saw their first alien. The creature had scaled skin in dark green and black patterns. Its face was reptilian with yellow eyes that had vertical pupils. Bony ridges lined its head like a crown. "I am Commander Zorak of the Fricari Dominion," the alien said in perfect English. Its mouth moved strangely around the words, showing sharp teeth. "Your primitive translation systems are unnecessary. We have studied your broadcasts for some time." Morrison straightened his uniform and stepped forward. "I'm Captain Alex Morrison of the United Earth Ship Endeavour. We welcome you to our solar system and wish to establish peaceful relations." Zorak made a sound like a hiss. "Peaceful? Your species knows nothing of true strength. The Fricari expand through conquest, not talk. Prepare your leaders to discuss terms of surrender." Morrison kept his expression neutral despite the threat. "Commander, we would prefer diplomatic discussions. My ship is authorized to escort representatives to Earth for a meeting." "Very well. A meeting first, then surrender," Zorak said. "We will board your vessel in 2 hours to assess your worthiness." The screen went dark before Morrison could respond. "Well, that went great," said Wright, her voice heavy with sarcasm. Morrison turned to his crew. "We have 2 hours to prepare. I want security teams ready, but with weapons concealed. Let's not provoke them." 2 hours later, Morrison waited in the ship's conference room with Lieutenant Kate Foster, the ship's diplomatic officer, and several security personnel dressed as regular crew members. The door slid open, and Commander Zorak entered with 4 other Fricari. They were all tall, nearly 7 feet, and wore metallic armor that seemed fused to their scaled skin. Each carried what looked like a weapon, though they kept them holstered. "Captain," Zorak said with a slight nod, "your ship is smaller than I expected." "It serves our needs," Morrison replied. "This is Lieutenant Foster, our diplomatic officer." Foster stepped forward with a professional smile. "Commander, we've prepared information about Earth and humanity too." She stopped as something moved behind her. Max, her German Shepherd service dog, had followed her into the room despite orders to stay in her quarters. The dog sat calmly at her side, watching the aliens with curious eyes. The reaction from the Fricari was immediate and shocking. All 5 aliens stepped back, hands moving to their weapons. Zorak's yellow eyes widened. "You bring your war beast to negotiations?" he asked, voice filled with new respect. "Perhaps humans understand strength after all. You control this predator." Foster looked confused. "Max, he's my service animal." "Impressive," Zorak said, studying the dog. "Show me how you command such a beast." Morrison and Foster exchanged glances, suddenly understanding the alien's reaction. "Lieutenant," Morrison said quietly, I think our friends have the wrong idea about Max." In that strange moment, watching Zorak stare at the friendly German shepherd with a mixture of fear and admiration, Morrison realized they might have accidentally found a way to impress these warlike aliens after all. The misunderstanding about Max the German shepherd continued as Commander Zorak and his Valkyrie officers stared at the dog with a mixture of caution and respect. Lieutenant Foster, picking up on the strange reaction, decided to demonstrate Max's training. "Max, sit," she said. The dog immediately sat, keeping his eyes on her. "Stay," she commanded, walking several steps away. Max remained perfectly still. "Come." The dog trotted to her side. The Valkyrie watched this simple display with evident fascination. Zorak's scaled skin seemed to shimmer with excitement. "Remarkable control over such a predator," he said. "On our world, only the mightiest warriors can command hunting beasts, and none with such ease." Captain Morrison carefully observed the aliens' reactions. He noticed how they kept a respectful distance from Max, despite the dog's clearly friendly demeanor. An idea began forming in his mind. "Commander," Morrison said, "perhaps we could discuss our respective cultures aboard your vessel. We could bring Lieutenant Foster and her companion. You would bring your war beast onto my ship?" Zorak asked, sounding both alarmed and impressed. "As a sign of trust," Morrison replied smoothly. The commander agreed, and hours later, Morrison found himself with Foster and Max aboard the Valkyrie flagship. The alien vessel was warm and humid, with curved corridors that reminded Morrison of ribs inside a massive creature. In Zorak's private chamber, the cultural exchange began. The Valkyrie commander explained their society, while several officers watched Max from a safe distance. "Our warriors spend years proving themselves worthy to control even a small hunting beast," Zorak said. "Yet your lieutenant commands this predator with mere words. The beast follows without restraint or fear." Foster smiled. "Max isn't exactly a war beast. Humans and dogs have lived together for thousands of years. They started as wild wolves, but evolved alongside us." "You tamed an apex predator species?" another Valkyrie officer asked incredulously. "Not exactly tamed," Foster explained. "It was more like a partnership. They helped us hunt, we shared food. Eventually, they became companions." This concept seemed completely foreign to the Valkyrie. In their culture, animals were either prey, threats, or occasionally war beasts tamed through dominant force. The idea of partnership with another species was revolutionary. "Show us more commands," Zorak requested. Foster demonstrated more of Max's training, fetching objects, finding hidden items by scent, even a few tricks like shaking hands and playing dead. With each demonstration, the Valkyrie's respect for humans seemed to grow. During a private moment, Morrison pulled Foster aside. "I think we found our advantage," he whispered. "They believe we're powerful warriors because we control dogs so easily." "But that's not true," Foster replied. "Dogs aren't war beasts. They're companions, family members. I know, but this misunderstanding might give us time to establish real diplomatic relations instead of facing their surrender demands." Morrison turned to Zorak. "Commander, on Earth, we have many types of these animals. Some are even more impressive than Max." The alien commander's eyes widened. "More impressive? You have stronger war beasts." "We have different breeds with different abilities," Morrison explained carefully. "Perhaps we could arrange a demonstration, a display of how humans work with our companions." Zorak seemed to consider this. "Yes, I wish to see these beasts in action. Show us how humans command them in battle." Morrison and Foster exchanged worried glances. They hadn't prepared for a battle demonstration, but refusing might destroy the fragile rapport they'd established. "We would be honored to show you," Morrison said finally. "But our ways may be different than you expect." "Different how?" Zorak asked, suspicious. Morrison smiled. "Our strength isn't just in dominating other creatures, Commander. It's in working together. Our demonstration will show you what that means." As they returned to the Endeavour to prepare, Morrison hoped this plan wouldn't backfire. They needed to organize a dog demonstration that would impress warlike aliens without revealing that Earth's war beasts were actually beloved pets who worked for treats and belly rubs. Captain Morrison called an emergency meeting in the Endeavour's briefing room. Around the table sat the ship's senior officers and 4 crew members who had service dogs or trained working dogs on board. The UES Endeavour was one of few ships that allowed service animals as part of a new integration program. "We need to turn this misunderstanding to our advantage," Morrison explained. "The Vrikari believe our dogs are war beasts, and they respect us for controlling them. We're going to organize a demonstration that will impress them." Lieutenant Foster nodded. "I've been studying their reactions. They seem to value dominance, power, and control over other species." "Exactly," Morrison agreed. "So we'll give them a show that meets their expectations while buying time for Earth to prepare defensive measures, just in case." The crew spent the next 8 hours preparing. Morrison contacted Earth Command to explain the situation and request additional personnel with working dogs. Within hours, a transport shuttle arrived carrying 6 professional dog handlers and their animals. Among them was Sergeant Diane Bell with her Belgian Malinois, named Rex, Officer Greg Hawkins with his drug detection Labrador named Scout, and search and rescue specialist Natalie Parker with her border collie named Dash. "Commander Zorak has formally requested a combat demonstration," Morrison told the assembled handlers. "But we're going to show them something different. How humans and dogs work together as partners." Natalie looked concerned. "So they think our dogs are weapons?" "Essentially," Foster replied. "In their culture, only the strongest warriors control predator species. They see our relationship with dogs as proof we're formidable warriors." Sergeant Bell laughed. "Wait till they see Rex get excited about his tennis ball." "That's exactly the point," Morrison said. "We'll show them obedience, agility, search and rescue, and some protection work. But we need to make it look impressive." The Endeavour's cargo bay was transformed into a demonstration area with obstacles, hiding spots, and practice targets. The handlers ran through their routines while the ship's crew built a viewing area for the Vrikari delegation. The day of the challenge arrived. Commander Zorak and 20 Vrikari officers boarded the Endeavour, their scaled bodies tense with anticipation. When they entered the cargo bay, several visibly recoiled at the sight of 9 dogs of various breeds gathered in one place. "So many war beasts," Zorak murmured to Morrison. "Your species must be fearsome indeed." Morrison nodded solemnly. "We call this a K9 demonstration. K9 is our term for these trained animals." The Vrikari were especially surprised when they saw Natalie's border collie and Greg's Labrador. "Those are war beasts?" asked a Vrikari officer with doubt in his voice. "They seem small. Size can be deceiving," Morrison replied. "Different breeds have different specialties. You'll see." Foster stepped forward to narrate the demonstration. "First, we'll show basic control and obedience." The handlers lined up with their dogs sitting calmly beside them. On command, the dogs performed synchronized movements, sitting, lying down, staying, and coming when called. The precision impressed the Vrikari, who watched with increasing interest. "Now for agility and athleticism," Foster announced. The handlers guided their dogs through complex obstacle courses. The border collie Dash particularly amazed the aliens with his speed and intelligence as he navigated jumps, tunnels, and weaving poles. "These beasts understand complex commands," Zorak noted with surprise. "They understand hundreds of words," Morrison confirmed, "and they can learn new commands quickly." The demonstration moved to more specialized skills. Greg showed how Scout could detect hidden substances using only his nose. Natalie demonstrated how Dash could find a hidden person in the cargo bay within seconds. As the display progressed, Morrison noticed the Vrikari's attitudes shifting. They had come expecting a demonstration of humans controlling savage beasts in combat. Instead, they were witnessing something their culture had never considered: a genuine partnership between species. The final phase of the demonstration was about to begin. Morrison glanced at Foster, both knowing that the protection work demonstration would be the most dangerous and potentially the most convincing. The final phase of the demonstration began as Sergeant Bell stepped forward with Rex, her Belgian Malinois. The dog's ears were perked up, alert, and focused on his handler. For this part of the demonstration, Foster explained to the Vrikari, "We will show how our partners assist in protection and defense situations." 2 crew members had donned thick padded suits. They stood at the far end of the cargo bay, looking like strange, puffy humanoids. The Vrikari watched with intense interest as Sergeant Bell positioned Rex at her side. In dangerous situations, Foster continued, "Our companions can identify and neutralize threats on command. But, and this is crucial, they only act when commanded and stop immediately when ordered." Commander Zarek leaned forward. "This is what we have been waiting to see. The true power of your war beasts." Sergeant Bell nodded to the first padded crew member, who began acting threatening, waving his arms and shouting. Rex watched but remained perfectly still beside Bell. "Attack," Bell commanded sharply. Rex launched forward with impressive speed, racing across the cargo bay. The Vrikari collectively tensed as the dog leaped at the padded crew member, grabbing his protected arm. The dog's powerful jaws clamped down as the attacker struggled dramatically. "Release," Bell called out. Instantly, Rex let go and stepped back, eyes still fixed on the target, but no longer aggressive. The Vrikari murmured among themselves, clearly impressed by both the ferocity of the attack and the immediate control. The second padded crew member began sneaking up behind Bell. Without being commanded, Rex turned and growled, alerting his handler to the threat. "Good boy, Rex. Protect," Bell said. Again, Rex sprang into action, this time placing himself between Bell and the threat, barking fiercely until the attacker backed away. Captain Morrison watched the Vrikari closely. Their reaction showed a mixture of awe and growing confusion. This wasn't the brutal combat display they had expected, but something more sophisticated. Officer Hawkins came forward next with Scout, demonstrating how the Labrador could take down a running target by grabbing their arm without causing serious injury. Then Natalie showed how Dash could disarm a person holding a training weapon by precisely targeting their arm. The finale involved all handlers working together in a coordinated scenario. One by one, attackers emerged from different hiding spots, and each dog responded to their handler's specific commands, neutralizing threats, and then immediately returning to a calm state. When Max took down the final attacker on Foster's command, and then immediately sat calmly at her side, Commander Zarek stood up from his seat. "Enough. This is not what I expected," he said. Morrison felt a flash of concern. Had they misjudged the demonstration? Zarek stepped closer to the handlers and their dogs. "Your control is absolute. But there is something I do not understand. These beasts show no fear of you. They seem eager to please." Foster nodded. "That's correct, Commander. Our relationship isn't based on dominance through fear. It's built on trust and mutual respect." To demonstrate, she knelt beside Max and ruffled his fur. The German shepherd licked her face affectionately, his tail wagging. The other handlers also showed affection to their dogs, who responded with obvious happiness. The Vrikari officers watched this display of affection with what appeared to be complete bewilderment. "What is this behavior?" asked one of the Vrikari officers. "The beast shows submission yet without cowering." "It's not submission," Morrison explained. "It's affection. These animals work with us because they want to, not because they're forced to." Zarek's expression was unreadable as he studied the interactions between the handlers and their dogs. "I wish to understand this better," he finally said. "This partnership you speak of, it is unfamiliar to us." Morrison exchanged glances with Foster. This wasn't just about avoiding conflict anymore. They had stumbled upon a cultural exchange that could change everything. "Commander," Morrison offered. Perhaps you would like to meet one of our companions more personally. Commander Zorak hesitated at Captain Morrison's offer. The massive reptilian alien looked from Morrison to the dogs, his vertical pupils dilating slightly. "You would allow me near your war beasts?" he asked. "They're not war beasts," Foster corrected gently. "They're companions and partners. And yes, if you'd like to meet one, Max is very friendly." The other Verkari officers stirred uneasily. One stepped forward. "Commander, caution is advised. These creatures could be unpredictable." Zarak silenced his officer with a gesture. "I will meet this beast. To understand one's potential allies, or enemies, one must study them closely." Morrison nodded to Foster, who guided Max to a clear area of the cargo bay. She had him sit calmly, then invited Zorak to approach. "Move slowly," she advised. "Hold your hand out like this for him to sniff. That's how dogs get to know you." The large alien commander approached with surprising care. His scaled hand extended cautiously toward Max. The German shepherd sniffed Zorak's hand, then wagged his tail. "He is accepting me?" Zorak asked. "He's saying hello," Foster explained. "If you'd like, you can gently pet him on his head or back." With remarkable gentleness for a being that had threatened Earth with conquest days earlier, Zorak carefully placed his hand on Max's head. The dog leaned into the touch, clearly enjoying it. "His fur is soft," Zorak observed, wonder in his voice. "Our beasts on Homeworld have scales or tough hide." Morrison saw an opportunity. "Commander, perhaps we could explain the history between humans and dogs. It goes back thousands of years." Zorak nodded, still petting Max. The handlers and their dogs moved to a seating area, and the Verkari delegation followed. Max settled comfortably at Foster's feet, but kept looking up at Zorak. "About 15,000 years ago," Foster began, "wild wolves began following human hunting parties. They would eat scraps humans left behind. Over time, the friendlier wolves stayed closer to human camps. These came from predator animals." Zorak asked, looking at Scout the Labrador, who was now sleeping peacefully beside Officer Hawkins. "Yes," Morrison confirmed. "Humans and wolves realized they could help each other. Wolves who became dogs helped humans hunt, protected their camps, and provided companionship. Humans shared food, provided shelter, and cared for them." Natalie added, "Over many generations, different breeds emerged for different purposes. Border collies like Dash were bred to herd animals. German shepherds like Max were developed as working dogs with many skills." The Verkari listened with growing interest as the handlers explained how humans used selective breeding to enhance traits they valued: intelligence, loyalty, specific physical attributes. "And they serve you out of choice?" asked one Verkari officer. "In a way, yes," Foster said. "Dogs have evolved to read human emotions and respond to our needs. They want to work with us because it fulfills their instincts and because we've built bonds of trust and affection." To demonstrate, each handler showed how their dogs responded to positive reinforcement: treats, praise, play, and affection. Zorak watched as Max performed a series of commands for Foster, receiving enthusiastic praise and a small treat after each one. The dog's joy was obvious. "This is remarkable," Zorak said finally. "In our culture, we believe strength comes from dominating others. Yet your strength with these animals comes from partnership. Different species can accomplish more together than apart," Morrison said. "That's something humans have learned over many centuries." "And do you extend this philosophy to other intelligent species?" Zorak asked pointedly. The question hung in the air. Morrison understood its importance. "We hope to," he answered carefully. "Earth has just begun to explore space. Meeting the Verkari is our first contact with advanced alien life. We would prefer to find ways to cooperate rather than conflict." Zorak stood and walked back to Max, who immediately perked up at the attention. The commander knelt, a movement that seemed difficult with his rigid physiology, and looked the dog in the eyes. I believe I have much to learn from humans and their companions, he said quietly. Perhaps my people have focused too long on conquest rather than cooperation. The cultural exchange continued for several hours as the handlers demonstrated more aspects of the human-canine relationship. The Vrakari watched with growing fascination as the dogs performed tricks, followed complex commands, and showed obvious affection for their human partners. Commander Zarek seemed particularly drawn to Max, often asking Lieutenant Foster questions about the German Shepherd's training and care. The tension that had filled the early meetings had largely dissipated. Our delegation will return to our ship to discuss what we have learned, Zarek finally announced. This partnership concept requires consideration. As the Vrakari prepared to leave, a sudden alarm blared throughout the Endeavor. Red emergency lights flashed in the corridors. Captain Morrison called a voice over the ship's comm system. Security breach detected in engineering section. Unknown intruder. Morrison turned to the Vrakari commander. Did any of your people leave this area? Zarek's expression darkened. All my warriors are accounted for. He turned to count his officers, then hissed in surprise. Except Krovar. Where is Krovar? The Vrakari officers looked around, confirming that one of their number was indeed missing. Commander, Morrison said urgently, we need to find him before. Another alarm sounded, this one more urgent. Warning. Main power systems compromised. Backup systems engage. Foster turned to Morrison. Captain, Max can track him. He's trained for search missions. Do it, Morrison ordered. Then to Zarek. Commander, one of your officers may be sabotaging my ship. I need your cooperation. The reptilian commander stood tall. If Krovar has acted without orders, he dishonors the Vrakari. We will help you find him. Foster quickly retrieved a piece of fabric from the seat where the missing Vrakari officer had been sitting. She held it to Max's nose. Find, she commanded. Max immediately lowered his nose to the ground and began tracking the scent. The other handlers readied their dogs as well. Sergeant Bell, take Rex and secure engineering, Morrison ordered. Natally, have Dash check the weapons systems. Everyone else, follow Max. The group moved quickly through the Endeavor's corridors, following the German Shepherd as he tracked the missing Vrakari's scent. Crew members pressed against walls to let them pass, staring in confusion at the sight of humans and Vrakari running together. Max led them to a sealed door near the ship's main power coupling. The dog scratched at the door, signaling he had found their target. It's locked from the inside, Morrison said, checking the control panel. Zarek stepped forward. Allow me. He extended a clawed hand and tore through the panel, exposing the circuitry beneath. With surprising precision, he rewired the door mechanism, causing it to slide open. Inside stood the missing Vrakari officer, Krovar. He was connecting a device to the ship's power systems. At the sound of the door, he spun around, drawing a weapon. Traitor, Zarek roared. What are you doing? Saving our people from weakness, Krovar snarled. These humans have bewitched you with their soft ways. The Dominion conquers, it does not make friends. He aimed his weapon at the group. Before anyone could react, Max burst forward with a speed that surprised even the Vrakari. The dog leaped at Krovar, knocking the weapon from his hand and pinning him to the ground. Max, hold, Foster commanded. The dog kept Krovar immobilized but didn't bite down. Zarek watched in amazement. Even in combat, the beast shows restraint. Morrison stepped forward and disabled the device Krovar had planted. It would have overloaded our power systems, possibly destroyed the ship, he explained. Zarek approached his subdued officer. You acted against my orders. Why? The High Command sent me to ensure you completed our mission. Conquest, not conversation, Krovar admitted. When you seemed swayed by these humans and their beasts, I had to act. As security officers arrived to take Krovar into custody, Foster called Max back to her side. The German Shepherd returned immediately, sitting calmly beside her as if he hadn't just prevented a disaster. Zarak watched the dog, then looked at Foster. Your companion saved both our peoples from conflict with his actions today. He showed both courage and mercy. The commander turned to Morrison. Captain, I believe it is time to begin real peace talks between our species. 3 weeks after the incident with Crovar, Captain Morrison stood in the Endeavor's observation lounge watching Earth grow larger in the view screen. Beside him stood Commander Zarak, the Vrikari's posture now relaxed in a way that would have been unimaginable during their first meeting. Your world looks peaceful from here, Zarak commented. Blue waters, white clouds, green lands. I hope it stays peaceful, Morrison replied. The treaty negotiations have gone well. After Crovar's failed sabotage attempt, Zarak had contacted the Vrikari High Command to report the incident. To everyone's surprise, he had also transmitted detailed records of the dog demonstrations and explained the concept of partnership that humans had developed with another species. The High Command had been skeptical, but intrigued enough to send diplomatic representatives rather than a war fleet. Those representatives were now aboard the Endeavor, returning with them to Earth for formal treaty discussions. My people have much to learn from yours, Zarak said. For generations, we have measured strength by our ability to dominate others. Yet your species shows greatest strength through cooperation. Lieutenant Foster entered the lounge with Max trotting happily beside her. Over the past weeks, the German Shepherd had become something of a mascot for the peace talks. Even the most suspicious Vrikari diplomats had softened after interacting with the friendly dog. Commander, Foster greeted Zarak. Earth Central has confirmed arrangements for your visit. They'd prepared accommodation suitable for Vrikari physiology. Thank you, Lieutenant, Zarak replied, bending slightly to scratch Max behind the ears. The dog leaned into his touch, tail wagging. The sight of the fearsome reptilian alien gently petting a dog had become commonplace aboard the Endeavor. I have a personal request, Zarak said, straightening. After studying your human-canine partnerships, I would like to have a companion of my own. Morrison tried to hide his surprise. A dog, you mean? Yes, your Earth scientists believe certain breeds might adapt well to Vrikari care. I understand there would be training required for me as well as the animal. Foster smiled. Several handlers have already volunteered to help establish a training program. We believe huskies might be a good match for your people. They are adapted to colder climates like your homeworld. Morrison watched as Zarak's normally intimidating features softened with something like hope. We could start with a small pilot program, the captain suggested. A cultural exchange centered around canine companionship. 2 days later, Morrison stood in a large conference room at Earth Central Command. Representatives from nations around the world had gathered to witness the historic signing of the first Human-Vrikari Cooperation Treaty. Zarak and the other Vrikari diplomats entered the room in their ceremonial armor, which gleamed under the bright lights. What made the scene truly remarkable, however, was the small, fluffy husky puppy that walked beside Zarak on a leash. The puppy, named Nova by Zarak, had been specially selected from a program breeding working dogs for extreme environments. Though only 8 weeks old, the puppy already showed the intelligence and adaptability that made dogs humanity's oldest allies. As the treaty signing concluded, cameras flashed to capture the historic moment, not just of the documents being signed, but of Commander Zarak gently lifting Nova onto his lap. The contrast between the fierce-looking alien warrior and the fluffy puppy created an image that would become famous throughout human space. I never thought I'd see peace established because of dogs, Morrison whispered to Foster as they watched. They've been bringing people together for 15,000 years, she replied. Why not add another species to the family? Later that evening, as Earth celebrated the new alliance, Morrison visited the garden where Zarak was staying. He found the commander sitting quietly with Nova sleeping in his lap. The Vrikari was gently stroking the puppy's fur with a tenderness that would have seemed impossible during their first meeting. When I ordered my warriors to unleash the beast, Zarak said without looking up, I expected to see creatures of war. Instead, you showed me creatures of peace. My people have much to learn from yours, Captain, and from these small teachers with 4 paws. Morrison nodded, watching as Nova stirred slightly and Zorak adjusted his position to make the puppy more comfortable. In that simple gesture, he saw the future of human-Vakari relations, and it looked surprisingly bright.